Hello, friends. This is Christopher davis-shannon, and welcome to the Tin Man's Magic Ukulele podcast. Today, we're heading up north to Canada to talk to one of my absolute favorite fingerstyle players, Mustafa. But before we talk to him, let's hear a tune. Mustafa, thank you so much for joining me today and taking the time out of your afternoon to chat a little bit. It's really lovely to see you.
Well, thanks, Chris. Thank you for inviting me. Just dumped a huge amount of snow on us, so I'm kind of distracted by all the cold in lately.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. So
I wish I could show you that it's 70 degrees and sunny here. It was freezing last week, though, so we're kind of getting it out of our system, and I think spring has finally sprung. But Mustafa's up in Calgary, in Canada, so a slightly different climate than Philadelphia. For those of you not familiar with Mustafa's work, he has a phenomenal YouTube channel that is all based around fingerstyle ukulele and all low G, which is one reason that I like him as well, as he does all the work that I don't do since I only play high G. Mustafa, I know that you have been a classical guitarist for vast majority of your life, right? But what brought you over to the ukulele world?
Do you want the money conversation or the emotional conversation?
Let's take the emotional conversation today.
Sure. So a friend of mine that I met in Iceland in a guitar competition, his name is Victor, and I don't remember his last name, but anyways, Victor, he uploaded on his Facebook a video of himself playing ukulele. He's a very accomplished classical guitarist and a Baroque guitar player. But anyways, he played ukulele, he played a national Chilean tune. And when I heard that, I knew, I wanted to play that tune right away. So I picked up my ukulele, tried to play it, and I was very impressed with how intimate it was. And then kind of naturally I played Tarzan's, one of Tarzan's songs from Disney, where, the name...
It always comes back to a Disney song, I feel.
You will be in my heart. You know,
I learned on a Disney ukulele, the Mouseketeers ukulele.
There you go. I played You Will Be in My Heart, which is actually one of my earliest videos on my YouTube. I played it, and the goal was to record like 10 or so lullabies for my son. So I played that one, and the next one was Stairway to Heaven, and then people...
That's quite a jump there from Disney
to
Zeppelin.
I mean, I was just like, trying to experiment with some... Because, when you play the, there's a da-da-da, that really kind of sounds like a lullaby. So I made that video, and I started getting private messages from people saying, we want you to open Patreon, we want you to give us the tabs, we want to, we want to take lessons, we want to do all these things. And as a classical guitarist, I've never received that kind of attention. So I thought to myself, all right, I will, do what the masses are asking me to do. And then you know how it is with YouTube. One video builds up on the other. Lots of positive feedback from people. And within 6 months, it just became, I always thought I'll go back to the guitar. The next video will be guitar, but it never was. Now almost 2 years later, I still think the next video will be a guitar video. And every Saturday I upload a ukulele video. So that's kind of how I stumbled into it.
Well, maybe one day we'll let you play guitar again, but I mean, to be fair, we like you on uke.
I think so. So I'm not sure I'll play guitar again. Some people are asking me. You're actually the third person this week to ask me this question. I really don't know. I just don't know. The ukulele is just much easier to play.
It's those two less strings that do it to you. But then on the other hand, I mean, there's certainly other challenges inherent on uke that you don't see on guitar. I think uke sometimes gets a bad rap for being very easy to play because the entry point's low. we can all pick it up and play a 3-chord song right off the bat. But
Totally.
with any instrument, and I always come back to piano with this analogy. Like, piano is the easiest instrument to play. Anyone can walk over to it and get a sound, right?
Yeah.
And I grew up, my mother and my brother are both phenomenal pianists. So I grew up with a piano in the home and playing. But to truly master that instrument, I think it's one of the hardest things, right? Although and I think uke is kind of the same. That like the entry floor is low and we can get going really fast. But then when you really get into the nitty gritty of it, there's a lot to work on there.
Yeah, and as an advanced player and arranger, the level of decision making that you have to make per piece is much more intense than the guitar.
From an arranging standpoint. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it could be harder for you because you play high G, so you're.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, and that's one of the main reasons I play high G is from an arrangement standpoint to challenge myself, because I can't adapt things that I've arranged for guitar or tenor guitar or any other instrument directly to it. None of it works.
No, for sure. So
it's a whole new thought process.
For sure. Thanks to the ukulele, I became a much better musician.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you on that. It's changed my perspective on music as a whole and made me find a lot of things. I mean, I know we exist in very different worlds. You play quite a bit of classical music, and I'm more in the jazz realm. And I found that, especially for me, the way that I approach harmony has changed by playing uke, because there's decisions that need to be made that you don't have to make on any other instrument when it comes to playing chords, because guess what? 4 notes is it, and how much can you say with that at once?
And which one of those 4 notes people are going to hear the most as well.
Absolutely.
When you're playing melody versus other layers, it just becomes very, very complicated later on. So I'm totally don't believe in the whole comparisons between the ukulele and the guitar, and that it's the baby of the guitar, and that the ukulele is the easier your camping instrument. It's not. I mean, it could be it.
It is a great camping instrument. That's the
it could be it. But you could make it. When I did the Moonlight Sonata, the one question I had on my mind is like, can it be done? And the answer is yes. It can be, like, this huge 10-finger piano piece can be played on the ukulele intelligibly.
Right. Certainly. Yeah, and I'll link to that arrangement in the description as well, because it's a phenomenal arrangement of that I'm going to be honest, I'll never play.
I will never play it again. Between you and I played it for. I have no interest in playing Moonlight Sonata for people. But I had to do it just to ask myself, like, can the ukulele actually play, something as complicated as that? So I had to sacrifice a lot. But the overall product is you're listening to the Moonlight Sonata on the ukulele, and you're able to play it if you get the PDF. Yeah.
Right. I'm curious, because you've released a ton of arrangements now just on YouTube, and you also have your Fingerstyle Academy, which I want to talk about in a little bit. How do you go about figuring out what tunes you're going to present next on YouTube? Because you're all over the place. It's you've done Moonlight Sonata, but you've also done Stairway to Heaven. You've also done some Linkin Park tunes, right? I mean, you've been all over the place. So, are these pieces that you love and just feel like teaching, or how do you make that decision about what's getting arranged next?
It's totally random, Chris. It's totally
I'm glad
random.
It's not just me.
I have a list of arrangements to do, and I have a list of tasks to do. And when you see it, I mean, it's there's over 200 items in that list. But sometimes on a Sunday, I would wake up, I would listen to a song, and I'm like, I'm gonna arrange that tomorrow. I'm gonna learn it on Tuesday, record it on Wednesday, edit it on Thursday, upload it on the weekend. So a lot of my videos have gone through that schedule. Where
I can't tell you how good that makes me feel, because I feel like I'm a huge procrastinator, and that's essentially how I produce videos. Sometimes I'll have a rare occurrence where I'll plan in advance, but it's not often.
It's exactly that, because Yeah, because you have to upload every weekend, and anyways, sometimes I do like more professional decisions where, I know I got nothing this week, so I do something easy. Like tomorrow is going to be a very easy piece that I just did
We doing You Are My
yesterday.
Sunshine tomorrow?
No, no, it's going to be a classical piece, but like literally the whole conception of tomorrow's video happened yesterday in about 2 hours, But then, some people send me messages. They're like, "Oh, we noticed like a mistake here," and I'm like, "Well, considering that I've done Billie Jean in a week, I am I can dig
Oh
that.
yeah, and no one's perfect, and that's and then your mistakes get immortalized on YouTube.
They do, but the thing is, I wish people understand like how. I mean, this is gonna sound like bragging off, but like how pressured the process is with something like Billie Jean or Gangster's Paradise, where it's
Yeah,
technically so difficult, but I only have a week to just do the whole thing. Now, obviously, with Moonlight Sonata, that took me 2 3 weeks. Billie Jean took me a little bit longer than a week, but that's all I have because of YouTube's world. I have that's you make something difficult, you practice it, you get it off, just it's out, and then you never look at it again. Like Moonlight Sonata, I'll never play it again. Um, Unless people are like, here is $5,000. I'm like, okay.
right. Maybe for that one private event, that one wedding that wants to
Yeah.
pay you the big money to play Moonlight
Yeah.
Sonata.
Yeah, exactly. Because to play it, I have to practice it.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's got to be close to perfect. Nothing's perfect, but close
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so the answer is totally random, but it's based most of the songs I've done. So like, here's a rule: if the piece is easy, grade 3 and below, that was just done out of necessity. If it's anything a tiny bit harder, then there's a good chance it's either inspired by my family, or my life, or something that I liked before. Like Linkin Park was my childhood, if that makes sense.
Yeah, mine as well.
Yeah, my son right now is listening to Sia's "Fly Me to the Moon," so
Oh
I'm
yeah,
very
yeah.
inspired to just make a "Fly Me to the Moon" fingerstyle arrangement. So
Oh, you absolutely should. It's really, it's such a beaual song. Really.
yeah,
You,
so
you can do it. If
he's
you
the
want a challenge, you can do it as the original waltz that it was written as.
I actually have to research it because I've only came to know about the song because of him, believe it or not.
Oh, Fly Me to the Moon, really?
Yeah, well, a lot of people.
Yeah.
This happens a lot of the time. A lot of people, because of the music I play, they kind of just forget that I grew up in a very far away place from here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and all what I had access was the smuggled tapes that my dad would give me of whatever he found when he leaves the country for work. I
So,
remember
and
once,
Mustafa, since some people here listening don't know
Right,
where
right.
you grew
So
up,
I
would you
grew
mind
up,
just mention a little bit about your childhood and
sure.
your
So my
journey?
first 10 years were in Iraq, so under Saddam Hussein, and that's where my dad kind of built the Michael Jackson,
So
tag.
Billie Jean is like an old tune for you that you're coming
Michael
back
Jackson
to. Then.
is very big in our family because we watched that VHS tape on repeat for significant amount of years. When the bombings were happening, we were distracted by watching Smooth Criminal over and over again. Under the table, and we're watching that. So that's like my childhood. So Michael Jackson means a lot to me. That just means it has that sentimental value to it.
Sure.
And then when I went to Jordan, that's when I was a teenager. Things were a little bit looser. But Metallica was forbidden, so to listen to Metallica, that was like my friend giving me a pirated copy, of S&M, and that's how I got to know about Metallica, Linkin Park, Eminem, and all these guys, which is all like,
Oh well.
yeah. So when I came here, I'm kind of like came here with a library of only what I had access to. So I didn't grow up in a Christmas dinner where like my grandparents would come to me and say, "Here's the Christmas tunes that you would hear," or you would get, all those opportunities to know about songs like "Fly Me to the Moon" or, the classics or
Yeah.
any of these
I'm gonna
things.
send you
So
some good versions of that tune to
You should,
to
you
listen
should. It
to
will
some
help
of the good old classic ones. I think I love the history of those old standards. Like one of my favorite things. I
I
have
would
some
love
great
to.
versions of that tune to share with you because it's such a beautiful melody and has been treated in so many different ways
I
over
would
the years.
love
Actually, and speaking of melody, before we hit record on this, Mustafa and I were talking a little bit as we do because both of us like to talk and it's about music, so it's very dangerous. We're actually you had mentioned having an Eminem record when you were living in Jordan, and we were talking earlier about addressing melody and adapting rap and hip hop repertoire to the instruments that we're playing, ukulele currently, and I've done a few myself. I've done some Tupac. I did some Lil Nas X. Not my big thing that I focus on, but I think that there's a lot to learn from those tunes, even in regards to melody and especially phrasing. And so like from the tunes you've done from that genre, how do you go about approaching melody and phrasing in your arrangements to capture something that's very much not made for this type of instrument or traditional instruments, and try to capture that feeling?
Right. So if we're talking specifically about rap verses, the very first thing is I have to keep listening to it 100 times to get a feel of what are the intervals available to me from the scale that person is using.
Yeah.
We're not talking about an actual scale, we're talking like, the minor scale. Okay, well, if that person is lingering around the third, second, third, then I know that I am mostly around the third. And then I start to ask myself, well, what key can I arrange it for the ukulele where I can have a tonic pedal, and then I can play the third easily, or maybe make the third my open string. And then what I would do is I would organize I would listen to the song and I would ask myself, like, where do those verses or like mini phrases end, and where is the big phrase? And then as soon as you do that, you start getting you start getting groupings of words set together, and then you try to figure out the rhythm of those groupings. And if you do that, you will find that out of 10 groupings, 5 or 6 of them are the same, and then there's a little bit of a variation. Now when you play the variations happen because there's word. But on a ukulele, there's no point of doing the variations because there are no words. So then I stick to those 5 or 6 motifs, and when you listen to the Gangster's Paradise, you'll see that there's maybe like 3 motifs that have come out of those 5 motifs. So basically, it's a huge mental exercise of grouping notes that are abstract words into rhythmical motifs, and then you play them. But then you have a rhythmical motif, you have an interval that you're going to fluctuate, 3 3 3 4 3 2, 3 3 3 3 3 2 1 maybe, or 1 2 3, whatever it is, right? But you're emphasizing that. And then the cool thing that happens is, let's just say, and this is going to be a little bit kind of like for people who are advanced, but this is like the secret. You have those groupings ahead of you. Let's just say one of the groupings is just 4 16th notes, right? So 1 2 3 4, like just a 16th note. Let's just say that grouping has 4 of the same note, like interval 3 3 3 3. I would take one of them out and randomly insert a bass layer, and that makes it a fingerstyle arrangement, right?
Sure.
So when you
so you're getting 2 voices at once. Yeah.
You start getting 2 voices. So when you watch In the End and Gangster's Paradise, you'll see that grouping of rhythm. But then every now and then it breaks, and then you start getting another layer in that's using the same interval, either a third or a tonic or like a triadic note. But the cool thing is you start getting stereoscopic effect, because you get right, like there's all these things, and then it sounds like a rap arrangement made for the ukulele. It almost sounds like it's composed for the ukulele, and it's a really hard process, but it's so much fun. It's insane.
Yeah, and the rhythmic stuff can be really tough, and I run into this in the jazz world as well. That our system of rhythm notation that we use in the Western world is not set up for the vast majority of popular music that we play these days, and trying to notate rhythms accurately. I mean, even in the jazz world, we have we put at the beginning of a chart, swing the 8th notes.
Right.
We just write regular 8th notes, which is insane when you think about it. Like, we have this system that doesn't work, so just do the thing you're supposed to do.
And it's really hard for a classical player, because I see these perfectly measured 8th notes, and then it says swing it. I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Dot, 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 dot.
You got to tell me exactly what I need to play this note, because I have a ruler.
Yeah, we have a pops orchestra in Philadelphia, and you can tell like a lot of the horn players and reed players are crossover people that exist in the jazz world, and then almost all of the string players are they're classical players. So when they're doing like Gershwin or something that has, you can hear the difference in the way that they approach swing from the classical versus jazz standpoint, and it's so interesting to watch. You're like, oh, you're just reading what's on the page.
Yeah,
and that's
really hard.
And the page doesn't tell you everything.
It's really hard. Well, for sure, it's really hard.
Yeah, and you've been on YouTube. You release a lot of arrangements with tabs underneath, and getting the accuracy of tabs for all that you're doing is not an easy feat to really put everything that you do that you need the player to do in one spot. And from an arrangement standpoint, that can be really tough to accurately portray what you want. But in the YouTube world, and something that we didn't really have even like 10 years ago as readily accessible, unless you wanted to buy DVDs, was being able to just log on and watch someone who's devoted their entire life to playing this kind of music, play it, hear it with the notation underneath, so we can actually easily digest what's going on. And for that, I think YouTube has become an incredible educational platform for music, because back to the notation point, in that what's written on the page isn't always reality. It's our best approximation of reality, and YouTube is giving us, and tools such as Sound Slice, and you can go much further than just YouTube itself, are giving us tools to more accurately portray that. And I know you've been teaching for a long time before you started a YouTube channel. So how have you felt that YouTube as an educational platform, not just a content creation platform, has changed your approach to teaching?
Well, a lot, right? So just to go back, I mean, you just said something that rings back on my earlier days, because I started learning when I was 15 years old, and I self-taught myself for about 3 or 4 years before I went to university. So for 3-4 years, I did exactly what you said, which is you would have a song or a performance video, so basically a video file of someone playing a song you like, and the only way for you to really capture it is to have the music notation somewhere around the video file, and when I went to university, I spent many hours listening to music, but with the music score in front of me, which is kind of partially why I stopped going to orchestras and live classical music, because I cannot hear it once. I have to hear it with the music in front of me. You cannot be flipping pages and
you want to go back and go, what was that? What just happened?
Figure that out now. Because when you look at the score, like your retention, and this is the biggest thing for YouTube, is like your retention of the material and appreciation increases significantly. So a lot of people actually don't do that, and I really want to take the chance to just say, don't learn a piece. If you have a resource where somebody is playing it on purpose for you with the tabs on the screen, then get the hint and learn, just slowly as you're learning your music, literally hit the space bar, let it run for 4 seconds, stop it, rewind. Slow it down.
Slow it down if you need to. Huge advantage to YouTube.
And a lot of people say, are you afraid people are going to steal the tab? I'm like, not really. If they're going to spend 5 hours going back and forth to write the tab, good for them. It's $2, so just go buy a tab. But anyways, if they do that, it's great for them. But I don't put the tabs on there so that people can write the tabs. I put the tabs on there so that when they do have it, they do exactly what you just said, what we did 15 or 20 years ago, except YouTube gives it on a single screen with the ability to rewind, slow down, and do all that stuff. YouTube, you're a YouTuber, so you know how YouTube algorithm changes the way we do things. We have to care about people clicking on the thumbnail. We have to make titles that are enticing and all these things. So as a teacher, I had to think of ways where all the boring things I want to teach that people need to learn, things like posture and proper technique and proper everything, which people just want to start playing music, but before that there are so many other things they need to learn. So it kind of forces you to always think in a creative way where you package things in a clickable way. Now that's strictly for YouTube. How does that change you as a teacher? Well, when you're in real life, you start teaching in a clickable way. In other words, more fun, engaging way. So students don't, they don't have the whole 60 minutes boring rambling going on. They get, quick segments of here are, here are 5 steps to doing this. So in real life, I started saying, here are 5 steps to, oh, I like your performance. There are 3 things we're going to work on today. And that's it. And then they get 3 things, they write them down, they come back next week, those 3 things are done. Before YouTube, it would be like, thank you for your performance, here's a novel.
Absolutely. Yeah, here's your feedback. And I think that can also be, you had mentioned, teaching the boring things that no one wants to learn, that are tough to, well, and I think posture and things like that and technique are tougher to teach on a video format, right? Not being able to physically correct a student is very tough. When you're teaching classical guitar, and you could be like, no, your arm needs to be like this, but we can't do that on YouTube. And a lot of people do gloss over that. And there's arguments to be made for technique is not set in stone, especially in the uke world, which certainly it is not, much like with classical guitar, where you have hundreds upon hundreds of years of history behind it. But for me, with most of my students, I tend to stress proper posture and hand position, because if you want to play music in the long term, you need to be nice to your body and not put your body in stress positions to play. And that's something that when you learn exclusively off YouTube, which I think is a great thing, I think we all can self-learn off with the corrected tools off of this, which is incredible. But it's easy to just not worry about any of those things when you don't have a one-on-one teacher to say, hey, your wrist is doing this all the time. Maybe that's not the best way to hold the instrument, And I think that can be a detriment of YouTube. Is it's easier to gloss over those things where a teacher can just explicitly tell you these things that need to be done.
For sure. And teachers, first of all, not everybody who's teaching on YouTube is an actual teacher. So what people don't know is that when these guys create content, they're mainly creating content not to teach, but they're creating content to gain traffic and attention, and they're trying to, create a brand. But the original goal isn't to teach. The original goal is to grow a following, and the skill that they have to grow that following is to make a YouTube tutorial of something.
Sure. Yeah, and it's a shame that YouTube pushes growing following. Like, their algorithm wants you to crave followers.
Yeah,
we all know that.
And it pushes the student to click on whatever's gaining, whatever, like there's a picture of like really interesting picture. But then what you have is this infinite amount of resources. It's all randomized, but your learning journey isn't randomized. Your learning journey goes through phases. Right. So you have to be extremely lucky to find the right source teaching you the right video stuff that your personality can, we can put 10 students in front of us right now, 3 or 4 of them might like me, 3 or 4 of them might like you, and 3 or 4 of them might like both of us, or 3 or 4 of them might hate both of us. That's huge. Right?
Yeah, and this is something that I think is actually really important that doesn't get talked about enough. Is a lot of people go to someone as a one-on-one teacher. Even we can take this out of the YouTube and go, this person's an amazing player, I want to learn from them. And then you take one lesson, you go, I do this. There's no chemistry here. The student-teacher relationship is so important. And I think that goes for YouTube as well. Like, I find there are certain people on YouTube who I like watching their tutorials because I think that they relate to my learning method really well. And we all learn differently. And that's one of the joys of YouTube is there's a lot of different teachers on there that teach in very different ways. So you can find someone that teaches in a way that's accessible for you.
For sure, yeah.
And many times we do just click around and go, oh, they're this and this and this, and they go, oh, I didn't like that now, but I'm going to keep watching.
That's the thing. You know what I'm starting to recommend to people? When they ask me, I told them this, I don't tell them subscribe or follow me anymore. I tell them, find somebody that you like, find their paid resources, and go to that person. And then I usually just say it out loud. I just say, if that person has a Patreon, subscribe to their Patreon and get what they're offering. Go to their website, take lessons with them, or do whatever you want to them. But basically, I tell them, find 3 or 4 content creators that you like and stick with them. because it minimized the amount of because even then you still have access to random videos, because you have, I don't know, 100 plus videos, maybe 200 or 300 videos. I have 100 plus videos. You're not going to watch my videos as they've been uploaded in order, and I don't upload them in order. Sometimes it's advanced, sometimes it's beginner. This is what the course that I'm selling does, that, it just packages everything in order. So I just tell them, subscribe to 3 or 4 people that you like, and this will minimize the amount of randomness involved. But even then, you're extremely lucky if you're able to find stuff that goes in the order that you need for your own learning journey.
Yeah. And back to your initial point, is that YouTube is not set up for that. It's not set up, the algorithm on YouTube is not set up for education, really, to guide you anywhere. And it's to keep you on their platform and keep going. And so you have your Fingerstyle Basics course, your Fingerstyle Academy, which takes all of those concepts that you teach in your YouTube videos every single week and apply to all the arrangements that you do, but actually organizes them in a format for a student to learn. And I think it's really easy to not learn in a structured way and do the piecemeal thing, which it's good to step outside your comfort zone, just try new things all the time. Big fan of that. But if you want to learn, say, Fingerstyle 𝐦𝐤𝐿, using your course as opposed to just clicking random YouTube videos, they could both get you to the same result eventually. One's definitely going to get you there faster.
For sure.
In my mind. And I think that's really important. So you did develop this Fingerstyle course for 𝐦𝐤𝐿, which I've gotten a chance to look at and go through some of the videos on there. Thank you for allowing me. And it's great because it does start from the beginning, as if you've pretty much never picked up an instrument before, back to all the posture we were talking about, to start you off on the right foot. When you're playing, so 3-4 months down the line, you don't go, my wrist hurts, and and then figure out why. And I think this is a big thing that happens, especially on YouTube. I've had a lot of private students that come to me that have developed hand issues, and it's mostly just posture and fighting through pain, and mitigating that from the get-go. I think it's something really important that you do in your course. But when you were coming up with this, did you come up with a curriculum as if you were teaching a semester at school, or what was your method for going through this and figuring out what's important and what needs to get done and in what order?
Well, I tell you, before the course got released, I made like 5 versions of it. So I had to go through 5 curriculums before I landed on the one that you have, and the one that you have access to is different from the one that was launched. Because it just got bigger, and then I don't know if you notice, there's those essential modules. They are broken into the gear, the mind, the body, and the music. Anyways, so I've done a huge amount of research into just like pedagogical research, because I am very interested in pedagogy, proper pedagogy, and not just not just to get you to do something, but to get you to do something in the most efficient way that applies like universally. So like every human being has, like our fingers are connected between the middle finger and the ring finger, which creates challenges between our, different from our index and pinky that are separated. So this is what I mean by universal. So when I make an arrangement, I have to make sure, if this is involved, I have to let you know about it, because this is challenging for every human being, and it's not your fault.
And everyone's fighting that.
And everyone's fighting that.
And that's important.
So you have to. So basically, this comes out of pedagogical research. So I had to do a lot of that. I convinced my university to allow me to do all of that for my master's degree, and they did forcefully. I told them, if you don't, I'm quitting. So they just made sure they allowed me to do that. So thanks to them. But anyways, so I just used. It's not really as if I was teaching a semester. It's just like in the last 12 years, every student who has ever come to me from scratch, their first year of lessons was the first half of the course. It's like I know if you're coming to me right now, like if you just send me an email, let's say I want to take private lessons with you, and I have no clue, no idea, like this is my first, like I'll be picking up the ukulele the first time with you. I know that our first 8 lessons are going to be, I know what they're going to look like, I know what questions you're going to ask me, I know what their answers are, and I know which directions you could take. Like I know I could tell right away if you're gonna keep doing it or if you're gonna give up, and I know why, which is kind of scary. But when you do it so often, it just it's very hard.
Oh, you know what students are gonna stick with you. I think that's
I mean,
always apparent very early on.
Yeah, and very rarely do you get somebody who comes to you who has like a unique challenge. But for the first 8 weeks to first, whatever, 3 months, if they keep going, it's always the same challenges. So I just ask myself, why teach it every single time? Just like, here's a course, save yourself money and like learn the stuff plus much. I mean, like right now it is so much more than just those first few weeks. But that's kind of what I did, is I just asked myself, like, what are they going to learn in their first 3 to 6 months? And I just organized that. And the organization was very difficult, but eventually I settled on things that you need to know before you play your first note. And then I settled on melody, so playing a single line of music. And then there are the chords, because everybody wants to strum chords. So there's a chords, and people don't know that, but I actually teach you how to strum in the course. There are like chord progressions, strumming patterns, how to make your own strumming pattern. And then I focus on fingerstyle, like how do you actually play 2 strings at the same time, 3 strings at the same time? How do you play arpeggios? And then I just teach techniques like a sliding technique, vibrato technique, harmonic technique, slurs like a hammer-ons, pull-offs technique. How do you actually do that? And then there's the repertoire section, which is like a huge section.
Right, which is great, but you need the technique to apply to the repertoire before you get there. And obviously, I mean, you can work through pieces and put learn techniques as you go. Like, I need sliding for this piece to go in there.
Do it at the same time. Yeah, that is the hardest thing. I don't know if you've noticed that, like on the website it says it's modular learning. That was the pedagogy thing that I did for my university, which is to basically give you Lego pieces. And the main important thing is, like, you can pick up a Lego piece, look at it, appreciate it, and then put it away. Or you can take it and then put it with other blocks. And both options are fine, So in my course, like, you can have one lesson, which is the longest of them, is 6 minutes long. But you can have one lesson, learn something, and move on with your life. Or you could say, I'm going to take this lesson, but I have extra 15 minutes. I'll learn something else. And then you put the pieces together. So, maybe you are interested in hammer-ons and pull-offs. Well, don't watch everything else. Watch the lesson on hammer-ons and pull-offs. And then there are 3 or 4 repertoire pieces that has that. And for the next month, you're working on hammer-ons and pull-offs just in that 1 month.
Yeah.
And that's really the cool thing about this course, is the modularity of it. It's not... All other courses teaches you chronological, which I think is a big error, because students don't learn that. Students don't learn.
And every student doesn't learn in the same order. It doesn't.
Exactly.
Everyone's brain is not wired the same. And I think trying to make a one-size-fits-all solution for learning is something. I know that the concepts that I present are not going to work for some people in the way that I present them and the order that I present them in. And for others, they'll be, I never had it taught to me in that way, and now it makes sense. And there's always going to be that difference.
Like the concepts that you teach, for example, you had that lesson, which is the tonic, the second seventh, like the supertonic seventh, the second chord being
the secondary dominance.
About it.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, you could be learning about this chord, and at the same time, you could be learning about secondary. Well, actually, it's related. You're talking about tremolo technique. You could be learning this theory and tremolo technique. You could be learning them at the same time. You don't learn one first, and then this doesn't lead to that. So when you learn music, you're learning so many different things at the same time. And if a course teaches you it chronologically, you're actually learning music wrong, because you will get really good in the beginning, and then you go do something. Then you're gonna forget that. And so it doesn't work that way. You have to be able to maneuver the pieces around, and that's that was the biggest original selling point of the course. Right now, it's just that the course is so goddamn big. Just go buy it. That's kind of the selling point.
People, you heard it. Go buy Mustafa's course. It's great if you want to do Fingerstyle. Well, let's take a brief moment here. Do you mind if we hear one more tune from you?
Of course, for sure.
Mustafa, we were just talking about your course before we took a little break here, and it gets you up pretty much. And we'll have to actually talk for the American audience for a second. That you go through grade levels in here. We essentially don't have grade levels in music and the arts in the U.S.
Okay.
It's not really a thing we look at, like grades 1 through 5 as the U.K. and Canada and a lot of the other world does have these codified structures of music. So when you go through your course, I mean, how far does it actually take you in your musical journey?
Well, I mean, it starts you before you play your first note. So this is from scratch, and then takes you from grade 1 to grade 5. Now keep in mind, these are grades that I have built from out of nowhere, but they are mirroring the Royal Conservatory grading for the classical guitar curriculum, right? So, I'm looking at these grades and I'm asking myself, I'm fairly familiar with them pedagogically, so I would organize grades based on basically level of difficulty, and each grade has a variety of pieces that cover a variety of technique, but they are all at a grade 1 level or a grade 2 level or grade 3 level. So the pieces, for example, in grade 1 are super short. In grade 5, they're a little bit longer because your brain can handle, 24 to 36 to whatever bars. But in grade 1, they could be like 16 bars maximum
and that's plenty.
With repeats, So that's kind of how the grades are. But I find grades to be amazing pedagogically for people because I'm a video gamer, so leveling up is important for me.
Sure,
and,
it is.
And RCM grades, when I went to the guitar, were the answer for my chaotic way of learning. Because then I just grade 1, and when my teacher says learn a piece, I'm like, screw that, I'm doing 4 pieces this week, And then I finished grade 1 to grade 8 in 1 year. I went through 8 grades. Because the cool thing is the university says to enter our bachelor's of music, you have to be a grade 8 student. So I'm like, all right, easy enough, get to grade 8, So a person could say, I want in 2022, I want to be a grade 2 student. So they know that. They know what the requirements are, and eventually I'm going to release an examination program where you actually get to submit an examination package, and you'll most likely graduate, but basically it will give you here's a verification, you are officially done grade 1. Don't waste your time playing that, move on. And it's not wasting time, but just to give you an idea of just to keep progressing with your technique.
Sure.
So I didn't want to make it a beginner course. I didn't want to make it an intermediate or advanced course because these are too loose of definitions. What is a beginner?
I agree. It's very murky waters when we get to intermediate is the largest section of the
Exactly. And it's really hard to get into it, and it's really hard to get out of it. But if you say, here's grade 1, here's grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5. It's brilliant for organizing for like a person who is, OCD about organizing things. It's just brilliant that way. So basically you get to grade 5, you're technically able to play grade 5, and that's what we were talking about earlier, is like now that you're able to play music, there's still the question of, well, do you sound good? You've just done all the techniques. You've done all the position shifts and all the proper postures, and you're playing the repertoire, proper tempo, but then you still sound bad. And then comes the development of, well, how do I get there, and how do I start sounding? How do I do what you do in your channel? How do I engage with music itself?
Yeah, and I think that's the hardest thing. And many of us approach learning uke, especially, I think, as a mechanical exercise of we learn what to do on uke, and forget that our end goal is to play music. And those two things are, yes, we play music through ukulele, but that's just the tool that we're using. Music itself is this other overarching concept that we still need other understanding of. And part of that's listening. I mean, let's be honest, that's a large part of understanding music is listening to music. And I always stress to people learning jazz standards, okay, go listen to 20 different versions of the tune this week and figure out different ways it can be treated and how you want to treat it. But on the other side, there's the theory aspect of musicality and understanding, these musical concepts that are going on and how to integrate them into your playing. And I think that's the next level, because you can be a phenomenal technical player and never say anything musically. And even if you can play the fastest, smoothest tremolo in the world, that does not make music, right? So the question is, how do we bridge that gap of, I have the technique now, but it still doesn't sound like music. And I think a lot of that is where understanding some, at least rudimentary theory of music helps. Understanding what we're supposed to be doing and how we get there.
That's exactly it. Learning music theory, like properly, because you could get sucked down a rabbit hole of textbooks. But learning music theory, just enough to what you need it, and learning how to apply it at your level as you keep going forward is how you turn your technique into expressive personal devices. And I mean that in the cheesy sense. I'm not a I'm not a spiritual out there guru kind of person. I am more of a stats and data, but that's the one area where you get to truly be expressive, like actually be, this is what my soul is like, because you're able to take the language of music and take those metaphors and hear them as a sonic result, and then you start getting lost in your imagination. But how do you understand those metaphors? And that's what music theory comes in. Music theory isn't just a set of rules that you have to understand. Right. It's a set of more or less rules.
I always love to say it's not rules at all. There are no rules. That's why it's a theory. It's how to analyze things that we are doing. It is not a set of rules that we are to compose by and to play by.
Exactly. It's how things relate to each other. There are universal facts like there's rhythm, there's pitch. There are facts like dissonance and consonance. But besides that, it's all about relating.
Well, and dissonance and consonance themselves can be pliable terms.
Well, that's why they are. That's why I don't like to use the word major or minor or happy and sad, because consonance and dissonance, even like in my theory course, I talk about like I give them an example of a C major chord, and in the first example it's a C G C, so it's a tonic dominant tonic, and in the second example I don't add any sevenths or anything. I make it an F C F, and I tell them in both examples it's a C major chord, but in the first example it is theoretically more consonant than the second example, because in the first example it's a tonic and the second example is a dominant, and it's the same notes. So it's just to drill the point that consonance and dissonance is basically a flowing, it's like when you take a blanket and you kind of try to dry it by doing this to it, it's kind of like a flowing wave of meanings that go back and forth. If you understand these three facts, then you're able to start using theory in your own performance right away. You don't need to go to circle of fifths or scales or anything like. I mean, you do need them, but you don't need to, if you just understand those three things: pitch, rhythm, and how to relate consonance to dissonance in your mind, you have what it takes to start incorporating theory. But obviously, if you want to be more proper guesses, educated guesses, or more intellectualized, or be able to actually analyze what other people are doing, you need the other tools as well.
Right. And a lot of it's also a communication tool in and of itself to speak to other musicians about what you want. When you're playing with a band, telling someone that you're playing the third fret of your A string doesn't mean anything to them. And part of theory is having that shared language amongst musicians, because we're all playing music, whether you're playing saxophone or drum trap kit or bass or uke, it doesn't matter. But over thousands of years, people have come up with words to describe what's going on that have been codified into language, and that's an important thing if you want to continue your musical journey. Is ultimately most of us are not going to just sit at home and play by ourselves. We're eventually going to play with other people. And being able to communicate concepts with other people is very, very important, and communicate musical concepts. And that's
for sure.
That's where understanding. You said you don't need to know much theory, really. I don't think.
For sure.
You're being consonance and dissonance being two of the most important things. As I always just go tension and release.
Exactly.
In harmonic things, it doesn't matter whether it's a tonic and dominant chord. It's what feeling is it eliciting in us as a listener, because there's a lot of like our 7 chord, a half diminished chord in a major key is ultimately functioning the same as a 5 chord. A B half diminished 7th is just a G. It's just a G7. That's how we we think of it, we conceptualize it when we hear it, and knowing those similarities and hey, I could do this instead of that here
That's
is
the
a
cool
really
thing. Yeah,
mind-opening
exactly. You
experience.
know, if you approach it as a function, like functional harmony, if you learn it as a function, then you can put whatever you want in that function. Except you know that structurally speaking, you need to have a dominant function before your tonic to lead to a cadence. But that function is called dominant function. But in it, you can put a shoe rack. It will still be it's in the location of a dominant function. You can put in it whatever you want.
Yeah.
And it will still be a dominant function. And that's the beauty of music theory if you learn it that way. And that's kind of why I made the ukulele fretboard harmony course, which will be released sometime later. but
soon. The word is soon. It will be released soon.
It will be released very, very, very soon. But basically, I got sick of. Well, actually, there are two reasons for why that course came about. The first one is that a lot of my students who were getting to the grade 5 and grade 6 and grade 7, they're doing the later stuff. I would see them getting all the fingerings right, they're getting the rhythms and everything right. But then when they play it, they're missing that extra edge. And I didn't want to make, ukulele fingerstyle pro, because that would be, you cannot, I can teach you 100 really easy songs, but I cannot teach you 100 pieces where each song is 10 pages long. It's just not economical for both the student and the teacher. It becomes really expensive.
And once you get to the point that you have the technique to tackle something that's 10 pages long, you've learned how to practice, you've learned how to work through pieces yourself, and that's important. And then it becomes the teacher's job to help you make it musical, not to just fix your technique errors. Right.
So I thought to myself, I'm able to get these people to get all the fingerings right without talking to them. Can I get them to, to a certain degree? Because sometimes they all, everybody needs a reminder at some point in a private lesson.
Absolutely.
It's like you've
ourselves
done that.
Included.
Yeah, exactly. So I just asked myself, can I get them to the point where they can make those musical decisions without having to spend, $50,000 at university and 4 years of their life? And and that's where music theory courses come in. But they are, in my opinion, this is not to hate on anybody. They're really bad, because you can either have a strict music theory course where it's like music theory but doesn't apply to your instrument, or I don't know about your experience in the guitar and ukulele world, most theory courses end up being you watching somebody improvise for hours telling you to do the same thing, and you're like, well, I get it, there's a pentatonic scale in there, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, most of the theory things I've seen are in more the guitar world than the uke world. And yes, it is a lot of here's how to use a pentatonic to solo over anything.
Exactly. And basically, and I have no problem with that. It just ends up being 10 minutes of you just watching the person just doing it, but you're not actually understanding what the person's doing. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to put both of them together. So I made like an actual, the way you would learn theory in a conservatory or the university, but I made it for ukulele audiences, where you're learning things like Roman numeral harmonic analysis, which is like a really big thing, but you're doing it on ukulele repertoire, So you learn, so to do a Roman numeral harmonic analysis, you need to learn so much. You need to know your key signatures, intervals, triads, functional harmony, how harmony relates to each other.
You need to learn your major scales,
You need to know your major scales, minor scales.
This is why.
Harmonic progressions. You need to learn all these things, and then form analysis, periods, phrases, cadences. I mean, like, we're talking everything. So you learn all that, and then here's the cool bit, is like, I start telling you, okay, well, you've learned all this stuff. Well, what does that mean when you play your music? So then we actually apply it to the ukulele. So, for example, you were talking about you're talking about sending your students to listen to 20 plus arrangements of somebody. So if you understand that what you're listening to is, a dominant 7, do, you have re, fa, so, and ti, which is scale degrees 2, 4, 5, and 7, and you're going to a tonic, which is 1, 3, 5, and one of those notes are doubled, and you kind of try to mirror how the 2 or the 4 or the 7 resolve. You start out, the 2, 4, 5, and the 7 resolve. The 4 and the 2 going to where they go is kind of unique, and how those. So then you start to listen to 20 arrangements, but you're also listening to what is that person actually doing with these 10 shins What is
Yeah.
he or she accenting? Are they adding a ritardando? Are they adding a crescendo? Are they adding a decrescendo? Are they adding a fermata? Are they adding a slide? Are they adding a hammer-on? This makes a big difference.
Right.
Hammer-ons reduce the strength of the beat. Do I want to do it on
Yeah.
the downbeat, or do I want to do it on the offbeat, and why? These are all interpretive, physical answers.
Right, and these are back to something I'd said, I don't know, probably 45 minutes ago now, about the way that Western music notation can't give us the full picture, and this is how we understand all that stuff that's not on the page. Is the reality is you have to understand a bit of music to understand how to interpret correctly and stylistically, depending where you're playing, what is actually written on that page, because there are standards, especially in the classical world. There are a lot of, as you were saying, like ends of phrases that have natural retardandos that are not notated in the music whatsoever. We just know that that's what's supposed to happen there, because that's what naturally happens. And maybe when we retard, we have a decrescendo as well.
No, for sure. All my arrangements have zero dynamics and zero writs indications on it, because I like to leave it organic, but I am assuming you know about them. The reason I assume that is because you're not paying for lessons, so you must know what you're doing.
Right. But it also gives the performer room for interpretation as well. I mean, there are some composers and arrangers out there who do their best to notate every given thing. Where I'm much in the same boat as you. Is I do fairly bare bones arrangements, and go make it your own. Put in the extra spice. That's important, because your personality needs to come out.
Here are the notes, analyze it, think about it, and make your own Christopher decisions or your own Mustafa decisions. So that's where you get to be a creative performer. But the creative performer has to come from theory. And that's what people don't get, is that music theory, this is the biggest thing I'm trying to sell to people, is that theory directly affects your finger. Like it affects the way you finger a piece, because if you know that note is a suspension and it has to resolve, and you're letting go of it too early, well, you've just betrayed the resolution. So this is a fingering decision that was born out of your understanding of a suspension, and this is just one example.
And something that starts to come out naturally in your playing as well, which is the other beautiful thing, is because always with fingerings and with left hand work, the issue is not my hand's not doing this, is my brain's not telling my hand to do the correct thing at the correct time. And when your brain has the understanding of the musical concepts behind what it is putting on the instrument, those things do start to come out intrinsically in your playing. And I think that's important, is players such as yourself, when you're playing a tune, you're not actively thinking about musical theory concepts while you play. Right? I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you are not actively thinking about all of the musical theory concepts.
Yeah, I mean, give or take, there's a rudimentary, like when I play something, I'm like, okay, here is, anyways, it's very rudimentary theory, but as soon as I stop playing and think about it, it just comes back. But all the organic interpretations are born out of an innate human understanding of theory that, you're right, I don't think about it on the spot anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so no, you're right. It does cultivate that inner musician in you.
And to get to the point where you don't think about it on the spot, you need to spend some time thinking about it on the spot and not going, it doesn't sound musical. Why doesn't this sound musical? And that's a really tough question, I think, to answer for players and teachers alike, is why doesn't this sound musical, and how do we give it that extra 1% that it needs to go from notes on a page to music? It makes all the
difference, doesn't it? It makes all the difference. I think that's the hardest thing to teach to people, because it's the most humane thing, and I think that's why YouTube kind of suffers in that department. There's a lot less of that than the here's how to play things, because it's harder to teach, it's harder to talk about, but that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to come in and say, this is going to be your tool to do that. Hopefully it works.
Yeah, as we were talking about earlier, everyone learns a little bit differently and all that, and there's going to be a lot of people who come into your system and it clicks for them. Because I know different concepts with different students presented in different ways. So because it's all about tailoring your method to the student themselves, and that's easy in private lessons, but less so with a course or on YouTube to get that universality of what you're trying to teach. And especially, as you said, theory is, I think, and musicality are really, really tough things to teach. Not theory itself, because there's concepts there, but how to apply it to the music is actually the hard part.
For sure. But this kind of brings us to something we kind of talked about earlier. It's just like, this is why I love online courses from a monetary value, because I remember one of the reasons I went to France was not just to be with my then girlfriend, now wife, but to study with a specific teacher. So if you think about it, I spent $1,500 to fly there, 3 years of my life, and I had one lesson with this teacher that I hated. Like I could not. I told my wife I don't want to study with this person. It's just awful, So
we've all been there.
That's just a wasted. That's like a €50. €50 at like about $70.
Yeah, most of our journeys aren't that expensive to find out we don't like the teacher, though. That's
exactly. But the thing is, if that teacher has given me a course, and the course is $200 or $150 or whatever it is, and I get to do that kind of investment, in retrospective, I would have rather spent $200 than 3 years and $1,500.
Yeah.
Having said that,
well, the courses are great because you can keep coming back to that content. I know that there's a host of YouTube videos that someone had posted, a guitar player, Ted Green. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a jazz in session guitar player, which is really lauded for his pedagogy more than anything, his understanding of harmony. And he wrote a lot of arrangements, and his arrangements would make no sense if you didn't have this cache of his videos from the 70s and 80s to be like, oh, this all makes sense. When I look at the page, none of this makes sense, and I think you're insane. Which, to be fair, he was pretty out there, but an absolute genius of it. And some of his private students had essentially just filmed all their lessons and kind of created their own little course out of it, which is I mean, Ted's unfortunately long gone, but but being able to find that you like a teacher and then keep their learning materials with you, because even in private lessons, I do have a couple students who do record our lessons so they can go back and refer to things. We're doing it, but many don't, and we don't remember everything that's said in a half hour or an hour. I sure as heck I don't remember what I said 5 minutes ago most of the time.
It goes by so quick.
And I know in lessons when I mean myself taking lessons over the years that there's so much that I've probably left by the wayside because it just didn't stick in my brain at that moment, and having now video courses and things such as that is just so advantageous for the learner in the musical world.
It is changing the pedagogy. Whether it's a text course or a video course, you can access it wherever you want, whenever you want. You don't, and it also makes it accessible to non-English speakers. We always take that for granted. A lot of my students are Italian, Portuguese, French, from Sweden, some Germans. I have few ones from different from Asia. Let's just say I kind of forgot the name of the country. Just one person sent me an email last week. But basically, they get to slow down the video, watch it again and again and again and again until it sinks in. And you know what? Sometimes it's okay to watch your posture again after 2 years of doing it. Is that how it's supposed to happen? Let's watch the video again. But if you do it in a private lesson, there goes whatever the fee is for that hour, But if you do it in
then
course,
it's done.
Yeah, exactly. But if you do it in a course, it comes in. So I totally agree with you about the theory being really hard. But for people, especially with online content creators, we have to have a return policy in there as well. So so it's really like you get it. You're not really spending that much money. There's a return policy. You don't like it, you get to... I mean, like, this is kind of like a heaven for students. Except, we are trying to convince them to spend the money and then stay there. But you're right. It's like, you don't like that person. At least you tried. You don't like the person, walk away. You have that ability, which is such a big advantage over what... I mean, for me, it's like a university degree. I can't refund that. I cannot.
No, absolutely not.
Now that I got it, I don't want it anymore.
Right. We won't go too much into the higher education aspect of things, but and the cost-benefit analysis of some higher education. But especially in the arts, I find so many of my friends that are the best players I've ever met did not spend an hour in in a university department
Exactly, yeah.
learning
Yeah.
to play. They learned on the bandstand, and they learn, go out. 'Cause it used to be you go out and you seek out the best teacher in the world for what you want to do, the style you want to play, and you go take lessons from them.
Yeah.
And now we do that on an immense scale through online learning. I mean, none of my students are in the Philadelphia region. I couldn't give in-person lessons if I wanted to any of my students because they're all over the world. And man, I wish I had had that luxury when I was younger.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's just being able. I'm sure you have this feeling to get students from all over the world looking at you and learning from you, and like it feels like you're spreading the philosophy that you want across the globe. And people,
it is, and it's truly amazing.
Yeah, it's humbling as well, but it is kind of like a legacy
absolutely
exercise. But it's all enabled by YouTube, online courses, Zoom calls like this, and I know a lot of people emphasize the human-to-human contact, but honestly, in my world, it hasn't impacted my students and my reach with them at all. We've been having genuine conversations, genuine relationships, and
absolutely,
I really think it's the future. Like learn how to bake, learn how to fix your house, learn how to drive. Maybe not, but learn how to do whatever.
I'm trying to avoid the driving thing. That's my new thing.
Avoid driving. Don't learn driving online. Get in a car and drive. But what I mean is, all these skills are available to you at a much, much cheaper price. It's just like you said, I went and I seeked out the best teacher. The teacher that I went to France produced 9 to 10 of the world's GFA winners in the past. Well, now everybody's going to know who I'm talking about. In the past, 15
it's okay. The
years.
classical guitar community is not listening to this too much. It's okay.
15 years. So he produced all these GFA winners. I didn't like the lesson at all, So
yeah.
And
as I said, I've been in the same boat. I mean, not on that scale of traveling across the world to do it, been in lessons with people who I admire so greatly as players, and just go, oh, yeah, no, doesn't work. This relationship does not work for me, and that's it. And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with seeking out a teacher that aligns with your values and your goals on the instrument and can get you there. And personality definitely has a lot to do with that as well. It's not just the best player in the world. It's got to be someone that you can hang out with for hour a week,
for sure,
and not hate.
And that's the hardest thing about YouTube, is that sometimes you have to, I really like the way you start your videos. You say hello friends. I think is that like how you start it? And I really like that. But YouTube doesn't allow you time in a video to show your personality. Like sometimes it just has to be like, hey guys, we're doing a tutorial right now. Here it is.
And that's what it wants, is the quick cuts and all. And I've just given up. I'm going to talk at the camera. I don't do jump cuts. You're hanging out with me in my living room. If you want to stick around, have it.
And I like that approach. I really like that approach. So it's definitely, you have to like meet the human behind the content creator as well. We're all humans. Yes. And YouTube and algorithms kind of suck the human out. But if you're able to remember your humanity, you will be able to be successful. So all content this is for content creators. Remember to bring your humanity with you as you make a YouTube channel.
And on the other side, for people who consume content and watch people on YouTube, remember that those people that are on that screen are also just human beings.
Yeah.
They're not mythical creatures. They're just
my house. This is the house that I have to pay a mortgage for. This is not a fictional studio that I.
I mean, this is not my place. This place belongs to the cat, but but it's where I reside.
The landlord.
And I think it's easy in our ever increasingly virtual world that is, I think, expedited even more over the past 2 years than we could have imagined, into a more virtual world that we're all just still humans at the end of the day, and respecting each other, even if you're just viewing a video or making a video, and respecting the audience that you're making that for. I think it's important.
It is.
It's those little things.
It is. It's very easy to forget when you're swiping up. But you know what? I don't know about your experience. My experience has been very, very positive. The
ukulele world is just so lovely. Yeah. I mean, that's the reality.
A huge advantage over the guitar world. The guitar world is like...
Oh, I know.
But the ukulele world It's just everybody's supporting each other in the ukulele world. So
The guitar world seems to be how competitive can I be?
it's so
It's like
annoying.
sports over there, man.
It is. It's annoying, and this is all styles. It's like classical guitar. It's a nice instrument, but look at the audience. I mean, look at the people doing it. Not nice. They're monsters.
Yeah, and it's cutthroat. And I think, part of it is the ukulele world is much more casual. It's I think a lot more amateur players, and there's no one's fighting for the first ukulele chair of the London Philharmonic.
Right.
Where violinists
Fight.
could spend their entire life since childhood gunning for that, because if you don't make it into the right conservatory, there's no way you're gonna have a shot at that. And we don't have that hurdle to cross, so I think it's a lot easier for us to be humane amongst each other, because there's nothing to compete for. We're all just playing music together.
Exactly.
And that's beautiful.
Exactly, and each person is doing their own thing. I mean, you're doing your jazz tension world, all those things, all those added chords and all those things that you do with your strumming. Your ukulele is unique, your technique is unique, your style is unique, and I'm doing something completely different, and they're compatible with each other. I mean, it's not that they're compatible with each other; it's that they're non-competitive with each other. And even if they were competitive. I spoke with your next guest that you're going to release those. We did a Zoom call, and even though we do almost exactly the same thing, there was not a hint of competition between us.
Because you do the same thing in such radically different
Exactly.
ways.
We have different styles, different clothing styles as well, But then there's this guitar.
Slightly different ways of delivering information as far as vocabulary.
Yeah, but you know what? There's this guitarist who is a classical guitarist. We're in the same world. We do exactly the same thing, education-wise, online schools and everything. And I'm trying to have a conversation with him. And the answer is like a consistent no.
Wow.
That's a guitar.
Yeah, and
it's actually much worse than that, but I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
But,
I think I know who you're talking about, but
but we started talking with each other. I mean, we kind of had nothing in common in terms of styles, but the conversation. Yeah. This is our third conversation, and it's been amazing. And I'm trying to build it with the person that you're having your podcast with. I'm trying to build it with other people. It's been so positive.
Yeah, and it's incredible how open and accepting the uke world is of all skill levels, all styles, everything, because we're all just here making music, and you can't there's no other world that you can really do that in, and I think the uke is very, very unique in that aspect, and just bringing people together, be it from like a community group that strums at a pub once a week, to like the ukulele festival scene where you have hundreds of people, the shared idea of just going to listen to uke music and learn for a weekend about
and have fun
the instrument.
Inspired.
It's a blast.
Be inspired by meeting the people who are doing it in real time without editing. See their mistakes in real time, but it's so important. And anyways, I feel like we're just rambling right now.
That's what rambling.
We do. We just started rambling. But if there's anything, I would say, if there's any content creator right now, like, don't compete with other people. If Christopher Shannon Davis and Mustafa are doing exactly the same thing, there's a good chance whoever got my course will eventually get your course, because how many shoes do you own? You don't own one shoe. You own 10 of them, and they're all different brands. Why? Because, and there's probably a good chance those shoes are more expensive than our courses anyways,
Yeah.
But it's not like it's not like if somebody comes with me, I'm excluding you. We're actually including each other, and we should partner with each other. But I don't know why.
Exactly. No. This is something I very much agree with. It's something that was really ingrained in me years and years ago. I worked for a very niche music store. I'm not going to say too much further, but a very small niche, but very big in that. And one of our overriding principles was, there are other people out there who sell the same stuff we do and work in the same world, and we're competing for the same customers, but there is no competition. You never talk bad about anyone else, because there's plenty of pie out there for everyone. And if you're just nice to other people, it gets you a heck of a lot further than talking bad about people who are doing similar things to you. Build rapport with people. I love talking with there's so many players in the world that play in a very similar style to me. Mm-hmm. None of them are around here. Well, 𝐥𝐤𝐬𝐿 is the only one that's like semi-local to me. She's in Pennsylvania. as well, but most of the people who play stylistically similar to me are all around the globe. And because of the internet and YouTube and all this, I've been able to connect with them. And my God, there's not a hint of competition between any of us. We're just like, oh my gosh, people who do what I do, this is awesome.
And you get better because of it, because you exchange ideas. You
absolutely.
You collaborate. That thing that YouTube tells you to do every time you sign into YouTube Studio.
Yes, collaborate with another creator.
Yeah, collaborate with another creator. I'm like, I should get the hint, But I'm a solo musician. How do you? Anyways, I have ideas, but it's very important. So it's I think it's ingrained in the way we're brought into this world to be, competing for resources. But it's just like you said, the pie is big. Just aim for quality and aim for positive relationships, and and be humble. But anyways,
that's everything. Well, Mustafa, would you mind playing us one more tune before we call it a day?
For sure.
Mustafa, thank you so much for joining me today. For everyone listening, I'm going to link below to Mustafa's YouTube and his website and everything Mustafa, so you can check him out. So thank you again, Mustafa. I really greatly appreciate you taking your time today.
Thank you guys so much. I know we rambled, but listen to all of it and make sure you send us with all questions. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind, could you just play us a little bit of exit music to get us out of here?
Tiny bit, yeah.